You must hear about so many different types of diets and juice cleanses and whatever else that influencers and podcasters promote that you absolutely hate because you have a deeper understanding of the consequences on the gut. What are some of the biggest diets or, I don't know, these sort of trends that you absolutely despise because they are misinforming people about how to create a healthy gut?
Well, I think the thing from my perspective is that trends fluctuate hard.
Yeah.
Right? In 2020, it was like the vegan diet was in. Mm-hmm. In 2023, it was the carnivore diet. You couldn't have more diametrically opposed diets.
Yeah.
Right? And so the problem is that to the person who's at home and they're trying to get this figured out, it's very easy to get sucked into whatever the trend is because that's what you're hearing about when you open up your social media, right? Whereas as I sit here, the science has not changed that dramatically in the last 5 years. We are working on this, but these are small fluctuations in terms of our understanding of things. It's not a radical, we don't whiplash like that, right? So nor has your biology. You have the same biology 5 years ago. So this entire concept of like whipping people over the place is total bullshit from my perspective. I want to start by saying that any person who has the audacity to change their diet in the interest of their health, like I actually think that's incredible. And it doesn't matter what your choice is because you're just trying to figure it out. And ultimately, I just want people to be better. But the problem is that there's a lot of dietary advice that's insane, and it comes on both sides, Steve. So absolutely, I don't believe that a 100% meat or organ-only diet is in balance or the optimal solution for longevity. But on the flip side, like a fruit-only diet, I would never support or recommend either. That's completely insane. What are we doing? So I think that like the more restrictive that you get, the more that I think you're drifting away from what is quite simple, which is whole food in balance.
What about these like juice diets and stuff like that people do? People do like a 7-day juice diet or a water diet or whatever.
So you will often feel better if you have gut issues and you take away the stuff that's irritating your gut. And so simplifying your diet and doing something like that, you can make yourself feel better on a temporary basis and think that you did something. Generally speaking, that's not really doing much of anything at all.
How long does it take to both kill and then create new gut microbes?
Well, so the beauty of it is that your gut is very forgiving. So the choices that you make today will be reflected in your microbiome by tomorrow. The beauty of it is that these microbes, like their superpower is that they are able to procreate so fast.
Procreate meaning?
Making babies. So they can create new generations, like estimates are potentially as quick as 20 minutes. And so we can use that to our advantage because if we actually support them with what they need, change can come real quick. And I get back to every 3 to 5 days, you build a new gut barrier. So there's an amazing opportunity that we have to actually see some quick health effects.
Are there any big sort of health myths or diet myths that you're concerned about that people are currently following or believe in particular? Is there anything you look out into the world and think, oh God, that's going to be awful for the gut?
Oh gosh, it's not something that I pay a ton of attention to because I'm not on TikTok, to be honest with you. So I find it interesting that actually like TikTok, some of the trends that have come more recently are actually on point. So, which feels great because I love it when like people are getting excited about stuff that's good. Like the fibre maxing trend.
I've not heard about that one.
So fibre maxing, it feels like after not really talking about fiber for a really long time, people are starting to come around to the benefits that come from fiber. And this was really exemplified on TikTok with this fiber maxing trend where people are basically trying to increase their fiber profoundly. So the issue though is that you have to ease your body into it. So I think the idea is the right idea of where people are trying to go, but the execution, I just want people to do it in a way where they feel okay. Because if they don't feel well, they're going to bail. And then they're going to think, well, fiber's not for me.
And what was this trend? It was people trying to just get above their daily recommended dose of fiber by eating high fiber foods.
Yes, and acknowledging that 95% of people in the United States and 90% of people in the UK are deficient in fiber as we sit here right now.
And what complications or implications does that have for one's gut microbiome?
Massive.
Because fiber is feeding the good bacteria.
Fiber is the principal food for the good bacteria, and it is the precursor to short-chain fatty acids. So the short-chain fatty acids are what we create when fiber comes into contact with microbes.
Short-chain fatty acids are the thing we create when fiber comes in contact with the gut microbiome.
Yes.
Bacteria. Okay. And the short-chain fatty acids are really good.
They're so good. In fact, of all the things that I've studied and learned about, these are the most anti-inflammatory thing that I've ever come across. So there's 3 of them, 3 main ones: acetate, propionate, and butyrate. They all have their own distinct effects within the body. They have effects right there in the gut, on the microbes, on the gut barrier, on the immune system.
And these are produced, these 3 things you just named are produced when fiber comes in contact with the gut microbiome.
Yeah, so like if you were sterile, if you were born without a microbiome, like you ever hear about Bubble Boy?
Oh yeah, there was a film or TV show, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a documentary in the 70s of this kid who was born with this rare genetic immune disorder. And so his family, in order to try to protect him, they isolated him, thinking if no bad stuff can get in, then he would be fine, right? So like he lived in a sterile bubble. So in theory, if you were sterile, you would never get the benefits of these short-chain fatty acids.
Because you'd never have bacteria.
Because you don't have bacteria.
Okay.
So, but we have the opposite of that problem, which is that we have bacteria, but we don't feed them. We don't give them fiber. You can't create something from nothing. So you have to give them the fiber in order to allow them to create the short-chain fatty acids from it.
And these short-chain fatty acids, so I've got my gut microbiome in my gut here. I put fiber in there in the form of what foods are the best foods for fiber?
Okay, so what we have here is an entire array of choices. And the beauty of it is that there's only one thing that I can spot on these 2 plates that does not contain fiber. Do you want to guess?
I guess that it is... Okay.
You want me to give it to you?
Is it the... It's not the turmeric, is it?
No, but the turmeric probably doesn't have very much.
Okay.
No, it's the oil. Because the issue is that this is 100% fat. So you, by definition, cannot have any fiber inside of an oil.
Okay. So
right.
It's like sunflower oil or olive oil.
So yeah, whatever type. Now you could have polyphenols, like extra virgin olive oil has polyphenols that are really good for the microbiome. Extra virgin olive oil is actually incredibly good for the microbiome, but it doesn't have fiber. Everything else has fiber. So we have all these different plant-based foods. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't have to be complicated. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, seeds, nuts, and legumes, they all have fiber.
Meat?
Anything that's not a plant does not have fiber.
Oh, okay. So if it grows in the ground, it has fiber.
So if it comes from a plant, it has fiber. And that includes, by the way, the mushrooms. So the mushrooms are technically fungi, but they share a lot of the same characteristics that the plant-based foods do. So there's fiber, there's polyphenols. All of these things we want to include in a healthful diet.
So if I eat these high fiber foods, they go into my gut, the microbiomes produce this thing called short-chain fatty acids. And the short-chain fatty acids, they produce more good bacteria, but also they help my immune system calm down.
Yes. So if you think about, let's go back to the model that we led off with, which is that there's these 3 parts to your immune system, or actually I should call it your defense system. Because your gut microbes are the first layer of defense, right? That was what was broken down by the antibiotics in Michelle. The second layer of defense is your gut barrier, which is the lining of your gut that protects the immune system. And then the third part is the actual immune system itself. We don't even want to have to activate that. We'd rather the first 2 parts take care of it for us, right? So the beauty of this is that you consume these high fiber foods, they come into contact with your microbes right here in the large intestine. Specifically, the right colon is the classic spot. And they unpack them and they release the acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And those 3 things impact your microbes, impact your gut barrier, impact your immune system. Now, of the 3, my favorite is butyrate. because it's the butyrate that has the biggest effect on the microbes, on the gut barrier. Like you literally need butyrate in order to produce the proteins that hold your gut lining together. And the butyrate has a direct effect on our immune cells. So these are, again, the most anti-inflammatory thing that I've come across. And part of why we're suffering with these, going back to the original conversation about these chronic inflammatory health conditions, and you asked me, where do they come from? We live in an industrial world where 95% of us, at a minimum 90% of us, are not getting even close to the amount of fiber that we need. And when we compare this to other places, so there was an interesting study that came out recently where they looked at the microbiome of people in Italy, Singapore, and then they had native tribal people in the Bolivian Amazon and native tribal people in Malaysia. So 2 indigenous tribes living a, hunter-gatherer lifestyle against Italy and Singapore. And what they discovered is that there's these radical difference in terms of the diversity of the microbiome. There's a difference in terms of their ability to produce short-chain fatty acids. And there's this question that comes up about aging. Because as we age, inflammation increases. Is that inevitable? Are we stuck in a position where, based upon our age, we should just expect that we're going to have more inflammatory issues? What they found in the tribal populations is that actually that's not true at all. So they were protected against inflammation regardless of their age because of their lifestyle. But they were living, and it's not just what they eat, it's they wake up when the sun comes up, they sleep when the sun goes down, they're connected to their tribe, they're not looking at Instagram. There's so much to that story. The point being, though, that in the industrial world, we're not consuming a sufficient amount of these types of foods.
I guess they're not also drinking alcohol and vaping.
No.
Which we, do a lot more in the Western world.
Yeah, we do.
What impact does that have on the gut microbiome? Because I don't typically hear people talking about alcohol in the gut microbiome.
What we know is that it definitely affects the gut barrier.
I guess
with
it's
total
also
clarity.
Wiping up my oral microbiome as well to some degree if I'm pouring vodka into
and
my
it would
throat.
be the same as using an alcohol-based mouthwash, right? Which now we don't recommend anymore. And so alcohol. There was a study actually that changed my mind when it comes to alcohol. So I actually don't drink hardly at all anymore. Very rarely I'll have a glass or two with my wife if we're on a special dinner. And in this study, they basically gave people a significant amount of alcohol, and then they tracked every 30 minutes the measure of their blood alcohol level and simultaneously the measure of what's called lipopolysaccharide. So it comes from the inflammatory bacteria that live inside of our microbiome. It's not supposed to be in your bloodstream. If it's in your bloodstream, that generally indicates that your gut barrier is insufficient and weak because it's able to get across. And the problem is that the immune system has been trained to identify that lipopolysaccharide as the enemy. And so it gets activated. And this is where inflammation comes from. So in this study, they had people have a number of drinks and they start tracking every 30 minutes. And what you saw was that as the blood alcohol level goes up, in parallel, the lipopolysaccharide goes up. When the alcohol peaks, so did the lipopolysaccharide. There was this weird thing that happened. I can't explain why, but the alcohol level peaked, it started to come down, and then actually it bumped back up. And when that happened, the lipopolysaccharide followed the exact same pattern. And the lipopolysaccharide did not return to normal until the alcohol level was 0. So when I saw this, from my perspective, to be clear, it wasn't a study of one drink, although we do know that one drink is sufficient to disrupt your sleep and cause other health issues. But when I saw this, I saw enough to say, I don't think there's any amount of alcohol that's safe.
To summarize what's going on there, the alcohol's coming into the body. It is impacting the gut in some way, which is making the gut go into dysfunction. And that dysfunction lasts for a little while. Because I'm trying to understand why you looked at that and thought, do you know what? Absolutely not. I'm not going to drink as much as I was.
Yeah. So basically, alcohol was causing leaky gut.
Oh, leaky gut. Okay.
Yeah. So alcohol was causing leaky gut. That's what we saw in that study. And the fact that the amount of leaky gut was proportional to the amount of alcohol in the blood, and that the leaky gut did not return to normal until the alcohol level was 0, says to me that any amount of alcohol that's detectable in the bloodstream can create this problem.
Which is going to cause inflammation.
Which is going to cause inflammation. We know with total clarity that people who are heavy drinkers, their gut is totally destroyed. And that's actually a requisite step on the pathway towards developing cirrhosis and alcoholic liver disease. So there are some people who seem to get away with it, where they can be a heavy drinker and they never actually get cirrhosis. And
cirrhosis is
the liver sits in your right upper abdomen, and its job is to detoxify your bloodstream. And all of the blood that goes to your gut, the first place that it goes after your gut as it returns to the heart is your liver. And it's actually a smart setup anatomically, because we don't want toxic blood to get access to the heart and then circulate and ultimately get back to the brain. So we allow the liver to protect and defend it. But the cirrhosis, what's happening is that basically the liver, which is soft and spongy, like imagine a sponge that you can put it under a faucet, the water goes in one end, wiggles its way through, comes out the other end. Okay. Instead of that, it's just a piece of plastic, right? It's hard. It's not letting anything through. That's what happens when a person develops cirrhosis. So, and there's many causes of cirrhosis. Cirrhosis comes from inflammation. So all cirrhosis health conditions ultimately are inflammatory health conditions. They're all part of the 130 health conditions associated with inflammation. But in this particular setting, what we're talking about is alcohol. And what I'm saying is that to create that inflammation in the liver, based upon the available data, it seems that you have to disrupt the gut microbiome in order to get there.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.